I mean, 'cause I feel like sexuality is one of the great questions of our time. It is. It absolutely is.
Well, I think it's, I don't think it's integrated in any other nature versus nurture question. I think it's just in the forefront because it's a hot button issue. It's a political issue, I don't think it's more complicated than anything else when it comes to nature versus nurture. I think it's just something that we talk about more because, again, it's one of these hot button issues, sexuality, gay marriage, abortion, it's the red meat for politics, but.
Are we born this way, or does the world make us this way? Long before scientists had labels for it, humans have looked at desire and asked why. Why do we love who we love, and where does that pull come from? From ancient philosophers to modern geneticists, the question of what shapes our sexuality has never had a simple answer. And at the center of that debate sits one of the oldest puzzles in human nature. Are we born this way, or does the world make us this way?
So what's going on, guys? It's the Twin Doctors, and it is a rare event that we're both together at the same time.
Should I hold my mic?
Hold your mic.
It's on my lapel.
Hold your mic. It gives you better sound.
Is that better?
That's better. All right. So what's up, guys? It's the Twin Doctors, and it is a rare occasion that we're both here together. As you guys probably know, we're doing a lot of travel medicine now, and we're here in San Luis Obispo, California together.
California.
So I just finished a 2-week stay. He's starting a 2-week stay. I'm headed back to Chicago tomorrow, but we wanted to sit down and just chop it up for a little bit, guys. So complain. Yeah.
Wine and cheese.
Yeah, wine and cheese. So there's two things that I kind of wanted to talk about, right? So the first thing was, I don't know when you guys are watching this, but today Jason Collins died. Now, I'm sure you guys have seen all of our posts about it, right? So this is old news for you. But, Jason Collins was a 13-year NBA veteran, and I always found his story to be an interesting one. So, again, I'm sure you guys know about it, but Jason Collins was a identical twin brother. He and his brother were born 8 minutes apart. And I always kind of felt like a certain kinship or connection with these guys because
we were born 7 minutes.
We were born 7 minutes apart, and much like they did in their life, we pretty much did everything together. So these guys obviously went to grammar school together, high school together, college together. They played at Stanford together, went into the NBA in 2001 together. Jason had a 13-year career. Jaron had a 10-year career, right? And so I always just kind of felt a kinship or connection with these guys. And they became a very interesting case study in sexuality, right? Because in 2013, because Jason retired in 2014. In 2013, he came out as being gay. And I always thought that was super interesting because, when people talk about sexuality, you always hear the nature versus nurture conversation, right? And some people say it's nature. You're born that way and that's the way it is. And other people say it's nurture. Things occur in your life or you make choices, so on and so forth, right? And I felt like looking at these guys, it really torpedoed both arguments to an extent, right? Because it kind of did, though, because think about it. If it's nature, right? If it's nature, meaning there's some genetic predilection, they're genetically identical.
Right, but how many genetic things are purely genetic versus things that are genetically inclined but are influenced by our surroundings, our environment?
So what you're saying is that it could be still both nature and nurture. The nature aspect of it, could be...
anything that's genetic in theory could be a little bit of nature and a little bit of nurture. That's all I'm saying. So you're saying that it kind of blows the whole nature versus nurture argument out of the water. And I'm saying maybe, but not necessarily. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I guess just, to simplify for people, the nature versus nurture argument is, and it's not just relating to sexuality, it's relating to so many things in life, right? Some people argue that so much of who we are and what we do and the decisions we make is nature and it's predestined. It's wired in our DNA, right? And other people say no, kind of that pick yourself up by the bootstraps mentality. You are what you choose to be,
No, it's not even what you are, what you choose to be. It is you are formed by your circumstances, by your environment.
That's
not necessarily a choice, but
that's a better way of looking at it. They say that, a lot of who you become is dictated by your environment, right?
And I believe that. Yeah.
I don't disbelieve.
We're talking about this as kind of one of those nature versus nurture arguments. When you think about identical twins or even siblings that are separated at birth and raised in different adoptive households,
Yeah.
And there's even that HBO or Netflix, I don't know, special triplets.
Right.
Who are raised in 3 different households, you know?
And they still had a lot of the same likes. They tended to have a lot of the same habits, a lot of the same mannerisms.
They also had different habits and mannerisms.
Yeah.
And I think that may not be such a good example because they were raised in different but kind of similar circumstances.
Yeah.
A better example would be if you had, one twin that was raised in a castle as royalty and one that was raised in the gutter, Would they be similar? Probably not. They probably have very different experiences and be very different people, So yeah, does this kind of blow nature versus nurture out of the water? it questions it, but I think that there's more at play than just...
Yeah, I mean, I guess nothing in life is simple. And I think that 9 times out of 10, when people want to simplify things, want to make things black and white, it's not because they necessarily think that they're simple, but for their worldview and for their sense of peace. Yeah, for their sense of peace. Exactly. They have to believe, no, this is right, this is wrong, this is black, this is white. Because if they start to see how nebulous and
that's scary.
Variable the world is, scary, right? Scary. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I mean, I always thought they were an interesting case study because it's like, okay, they share the same nature aspect. They're genetically identical, right? And they share the same nurture aspect. They grew up in the same household, literally. And one was there 8 minutes after the other one. They did all of the same things. They liked all of the same things. They had all of the same leanings. They literally were clones of one another. And yet, one was heterosexual and one was homosexual.
But to throw another fly into the ointment of nature versus nurture, it could be that there is a nature component, but the nurture component could be, it could manifest itself differently in different people. So we could be genetically the same. What nurtures you in this direction may nurture me in that direction. You know?
So what you're saying is, two people could be exposed to the same external stimuli, the same external stimuli, the same nurture, but it affects them differently.
Exactly.
But then if they have the same nature and the same DNA and the same genetic makeup, how does it affect one differently than the other? Because what is nurture working on? It's working on the nature.
I'll give an example. Like for me, and maybe this isn't a good example because I don't know about you, but for me, I'm very sensitive to temperatures, right? Mm-hmm. So if a pool is kind of cold, like I can get, like, people are getting like, oh, it's a little cold. I'm like, it's too cold for me. Right. Or, you know, whereas for you, maybe, you know, I don't know. Do you have that? Do you experience that when you get into a cold?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, well, then that's not a good example. Yeah. But my point was to say that, you know, I guess. What was my point?
Like, I don't know. It's because what I think of is this, right? I think of epigenetics, right? And the whole concept of epigenetics is to say that, you know, all of our DNA is like 99.2, 99.3% the same. Yet we see very different manifestations of that, right? Some people are healthy, some people aren't. Some people are tall, some people are short, some people are fat, some people are skinny. And the whole thing is that certain life experiences, not just your life experiences, but even life experiences of those who came before you, whose DNA you have, turn certain genes on, turn certain genes off. And when certain genes are turned on, you create certain proteins that make you a different person.
Kind of making
genes are turned off.
Making my argument think about it. So do you think that 99% of genes are useless and they serve no purpose? There's only like one.
Actually, yes, a lot of them are useless, right?
As far as we know. As far as we know. Right. And that's the point. So I think you kind of just answered your own question. So we know the function of maybe 1-2% of genes. Do you think, like I said, the other 99% are just useless in that we believe in God or nature? You think they're just putting there for our shits and giggles? Probably not. So I think the point is we know a lot about what we know, but there's a lot that we don't know. And these answers that we're probably wondering are probably in that 98% that we don't know.
Okay, but let's just say that you know, 98% of our genes aren't functional. Or maybe they are. I was going to say, or they are, but we don't know how they're functioning. Mm-hmm. These two still share the same genes.
But if we don't know what those 98% do, who cares? Like,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Hold on. It doesn't matter if we know what they do or don't do because they have the same genes, so they're doing the same thing.
But they do the same, but we don't know how it can be how the genes can be affected in different people. Just because you grew up in the same household doesn't mean you have the same exposure and the same experience.
But that's becoming very like esoteric and theoretical, right? Because
life is esoteric and theoretical.
Yes and no, actually. But think about it. So let's just say you put 2 crab in boiling water. Mm-hmm. It's safe to assume that both of them are going to boil and die, right?
But maybe not at the same temperature. One might boil at 98, one might boil at 99.5.
Maybe. I mean, that's possible. That's possible. Yeah. I mean, there's certain questions you're not gonna answer, I guess. But I just felt like they were a very interesting case study because I guess depending on how you looked at it, you can make the argument that they blew the nature side of the argument out of the water because they both had the same nature, same genetic material, identical, and yet they turned out very differently. And it kind of blew the nurture side of the argument out of the water because they were literally nurtured the same way.
But then what does that tell us? So what that tells us, that brings us to the beginning. That tells us that we know nothing. So how does it?
Well, I don't know that it tells us that we
doesn't blow the nature or the nurture out because you can't blow them both out.
Well, maybe it's just that there's a third factor that we're not aware of, right? Maybe the nature's a factor, maybe the nurture's a factor, but maybe there's another variable or another factor that we don't understand or consider.
Could be,
you know,
but it doesn't support an argument of nature versus nurture because now we're talking about this third. What are they? I'm tired. I've been up since 4 o'clock in the morning with deliveries and traveling, but back in the old days of medicine, oh god, they had 2. Oh my god, it's like the water and the.
You're talking about the different elements?
Yes,
fire, water, air.
But there was like the specific name was like plasma. It wasn't plasma. But my point is to say they had these.
The humor. They call it humor. Humor. Yeah.
Yeah, they had these theories. They had these theories. Yeah. Which were later disproven. So what we're talking about now is kind of like the humor. Like, well, maybe there's a third. Well, maybe there isn't. You know.
Yeah. I mean, let me tell you. My whole point in bringing this up, I guess, was to say that the nature versus nurture argument neither one of them answered the question as to why they were different. You know? Because again, if you're strictly like, it's natural, you're born this way, that's the way you're made, end of story, full stop. You've got to reconcile the fact that they were genetically the same, yet turned out very differently. And conversely, if it's nurture, it's a choice, genetics don't play a role, that's an injustice. God would not make you that way and then make you, sin through your nature. Then you have to explain the fact that they grew up in the same environment, they had the same nurture and turned out very differently. So I guess my point is, no matter how you look at it, it calls both arguments into question. And so maybe what that does at the end of the day,
what that does at the end of the day is it tells us we don't have a freaking clue. That's what it does at the end of the day.
Right, yeah.
So basically it brings us back to where we started. Could be nature, could be nurture, could be both.
And that's what I said. I felt like their story was so interesting because it calls both things into question. It should make both people on both sides of the argument, if they're being intellectually honest and not just wedded to their idea for the sake of ego and being obstreperous, but if they're being intellectually honest, obstreperous, you like that? Obstreperous.
I know the meaning. I know how to spell it.
I don't know how to spell it, damn it. but I'll use it in a word, or I'll use it in a sentence. But I guess that was my point. That's why I found them so interesting, because I felt like people on both sides of the argument, if they were being intellectually honest and not just stuck on a perspective, I had to say like, well, damn, these guys call my perspective into question.
But you could just as easily say that they allow both people like on both sides of the argument to feel supported.
How so?
Because like if I'm on the nurture side, I'm gonna say, well, clearly it's nurture, can't be nature, because like you said, they're genetically the same. But if I'm on the nature side, I'm gonna say, they were nurtured the same, so it's gotta be nature, right? So I think it allows both people to kind of retreat to their side and kind of say, see, I'm right.
I don't think so, because if you're on the nurture side, you're saying they were nurtured the same. And if you're on the nature side, you're saying genetically they're identical. They share the same nature.
Sorry guys, flying does this too.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I mean, I thought they were a very interesting case, and I honestly wanted to. At one point I was like, I would love to sit down with these guys, even interview them. Not that we have that pull per se, but I would have loved to have done it because I felt like there was so much to be explored there.
I
because I feel like sexuality is one of the great questions of our time. It is. It absolutely is.
Well, I don't think it's integrated in any other nature versus nurture question. I think it's just in the forefront because it's a hot button issue. It's a political issue, I don't think it's more complicated than anything else when it comes to nature versus nurture. I think it's just something that we talk about more because, again, it's one of these hot button issues, sexuality, gay marriage, abortion, it's the red meat for politics, but I don't think that it's any more of a nature versus nurture question than any other thing.
I don't know if I agree with that, because I think sexuality to a large extent comes down to it's a great deal of who and what you are. It's not everything. Like, people view everything through the lens of sexuality, and that's not accurate either.
How so? Like, you mean a great deal of who you are?
Well, because without sexuality, there's no humanity, for starters.
There's a difference between sex and sexuality, though.
Well, but sexuality leads to sex. Yes.
Sexuality it's almost emotional, whereas sex is physical.
No, sexuality is sexuality. There are physical manifestations of sexuality and emotional manifestations of sexuality.
Okay.
And yeah,
I'm going to argue on this one because I think you can be heterosexual, you can be homosexual, you can be bisexual, you can be pansexual, and a virgin, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so sex and sexuality are different then.
No, I said sex is a physical manifestation of sexuality. It doesn't mean that you engage in that physical manifestation, but it's still it's a part of it. It's a part of it, right?
I'll give you that. I wouldn't say even it's a physical manifestation. I would say it is a part of it, sure. But there are people that are homosexual that engage in heterosexual sex, or people that are heterosexual that engage in homosexual, or so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So there's not a direct link between your sexuality and sex. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know if I agree with that at all. Maybe you're saying there's not a direct link between your sexuality and how you engage in sexual activities.
Now you're nitpicking. Yes, between your sexuality and sex. So I guess what I'm saying is they are related, but they are different things. They're different things.
Okay. Well, then I guess just to wrap it up, because to me, I think it's all very interesting, but to wrap it up, considering their case and just considering what we know in general, on an intellectual level, a psychological level, a physiological, pathological level, do you think that sexuality, be it that you're heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, pansexual, whatever the case may be, is it more of a nature, genetic predilection sort of thing, or is it more of a nurture, environment, what you were raised around, how you were raised sort of thing?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
You're asking
yeah. No, I'm asking you.
Oh, I think it is definitely, I think it's genetic, I think it's genetic. I mean, I was going to say I think that it's 95% genetic, 95% nature, 5% nurture, but I don't necessarily believe that. I think that I don't want to put a percentage because I don't know that, but I would say I think it is nature. I think that it is genetic, and I have a multitude of reasons why I think that, but I think that it is nature.
Okay,
for sure.
Then not to beat a dead horse, but if it is predominantly nature, how do identical twins turn out differently in that regard?
And that's the thing. Like, you could say, I'm sure there are tons of cases of identical twins who live similar lives, and one dies of breast cancer and one dies of a heart attack at 90. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there are a lot of, questions we just don't necessarily have the answer to. But I think that, I think that we know very well that there are people who, like you said, sexuality is a spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that we know very well that there are people that have exhibited, certain sexual predilections at an early age, and so that would kind of blow the nurture argument out of the water.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, there are people who I remember growing up, there were people who in first and second grade, I thought to myself, they're very feminine. I think they're gay. I remember thinking that at that age. And so, yeah, and they were always like that. And so I do think that nature plays a role. I just don't know how you reconcile that with the fact that you have people who are genetically identical, but still there's different manifestations. But, and again, we won't get into the weeds because you could talk about it forever. But I do remember reading one study where they were actually looking at that, and they were talking about that there may be, if they're identical twins, but they have two different placentas, because you can be identical with a shared placenta or identical with two placentas.
Which are most twins.
Yeah. And if you're identical with two placentas, there was some thought that the hormonal environment of one placenta may be different from the hormonal environment of the other, and it creates certain signals in one baby and certain signals in another baby, and then not the sexual differentiation from a physical perspective, but just from a psychological perspective as that occurs, results in one having the predilection towards heterosexuality and one towards homosexuality. So maybe
is that genetic? That's more.
It's still genetic.
Environmental.
Well, it's environmental. Maybe how it's affecting the genes. I don't know. It's hard to say. But I don't know. Super interesting topic for sure. It's nothing that we'll ever answer, and probably we're not meant to.
So what say you? I feel like I feel like I'm starting with the same question.
No, I think it's multifactorial. I think that there's in some cases a nurture aspect, because you do see, for example, higher rates of homosexuality in people who were sexually abused, right? And so there could be a nurture aspect there.
That's a danger. That's okay.
Well, then we won't even talk about it. No, we can talk about it. No, but I mean, that's been documented though, right? That's been documented. And so
has it though? Hold on, wait a minute.
Well, I think it has. I mean,
I'm going to challenge you just like doing politics. She gets on the stage and says,
"Well, I heard."
Yes, exactly. So, what exactly has been documented?
And that's where you're going to get me.
I'm not asking for a study.
No,
I'm not asking for a study. I'm just saying
I do recall having read studies, but again, now I don't ask me double-blinded case control, like retrospect. I don't know. Was it legit? Maybe not. Sample size of 3. I don't know. But I have read studies where they draw a correlation between a higher rate of homosexuality in people who were victims of sexual abuse in childhood.
See, no, because what that would say to me then is that it is nurture and not nature.
No, but what I said.
But what I would say to you is, if that were the case, then 1 in 3 women would be a lesbian.
I think
no, because okay,
you're talking about adulthood versus childhood.
Well, no, I'm just saying that 1 in 3 women is exposed to some type of sexual violence. Women. But
by the time you reach adulthood, yeah.
So okay, so maybe I should clarify. So what are you saying then? So you talking?
I know where you're going with this, and I don't know. To be honest, I don't recall if the studies specified sexual abuse at the hands of someone who was the same sex or different. I honestly don't know. I don't know. So I don't know. I'd have to dig into that more. But again, get that shit out of here. Yeah, get that shit out of here. No, but I do think at the end, I think it's nurture. Again, I'm not saying
it's nurture.
No, I'm sorry. I think it's multifactorial. I think nature plays a role. I think that whole placental microenvironment argument plays a role. I think that there may be some genetics, again, like epigenetics, certain genes are turned on in certain people, certain genes are turned off in certain people. They both have them, but they're activated in some and quiescent in others. So that plays a role. I think that nurture could play a role in some cases. I think it's multifactorial. I don't think that you're going to find one reason. I don't think you're going to find 2. I think you'll find multiple reasons, and it's almost like that Swiss cheese theory. I think it's multifactorial. It's a combination of both. Yeah, that Swiss cheese theory where just everything lines up just so, and it's like, oh, boom.
I think I'm saying that it's multifactorial. Clearly it is, obviously.
Do you want the people to hear you?
Lean in closely. No, I was saying, I think that by saying it's multifactorial, and clearly it is multifactorial, but by saying that there is a nurture element to it, it almost makes it seem like there's a choice. And
no, absolutely not.
Well, when I say a choice, I mean in the sense that you can turn somebody fill in the blank.
No, because I mean, you could look at anything that modifies the body after exposure to certain things, and it's not a choice. It's just how the body responds to things, you know. So I wouldn't make that argument at all.